All rise. Please be seated.
Thank you very much. Witness, welcome back. We're now in open session, and Mr. Hooper will cross-examine. Is that it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, just before that. The Victims' Counsel had, sorry about that. Victims' Counsel had requested to ask the witness some questions. And Mr. Nderita, you said you can do it in 15 minutes?
Yes, Mr. President, I hope so. It may perhaps spill over beyond the 15, but...
the tendency would be to limit you to 10 minutes, not to spill over beyond 15 minutes. So if you can then begin your questions of the witness. Leave is granted.
Much obliged. Mr. Witness, good morning. Now, you testified that you used to live in location number 1 and that on 31st December 2007, you went to location number 17, and on 1st January to the house of person number 23 in the company of 3 other people.
Sure.
Very quickly, for what purpose did you go to location number 17 and the residence of person number 23?
Now we are in public session. I need to remind you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
I was running away.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Now, so I take it that you were in fear or some sort of threat. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how long had you lived in location number 1 before the post-election violence?
More than 20 years.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Had there been any form of generalized violence before that one that you have testified about in 2007, 2008 in your location?
Yes, there was in 1992 and again in 1997.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Was this violence between communities, and if it was, which communities was it between?
Yes, it was between communities, Kikuyu and Kalenjin.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Now, I ask for leave to go into private session.
Private session for how long?
For about 5 minutes.
We will go into private session.
Nous sommes en audience publique, Monsieur le Président.
Good morning, Mr. Witness.
Good morning.
First of all, thank you for the clarity with which you've given your evidence. It leaves me in the happy position of not needing very much time this morning with you. And please bear in mind, when I'm asking questions, that you are a protected witness. And if you do think that any answer that you may give me may identify you, then please let us know, and we can go into private or closed session. Now, I'd like to start, if I may, with your evidence relating to that event in mid-2006. In fact, we know that it was the 4th of June 2006, at the Eldoret Sports Club, when Mr. Ruto was made, as it was called, quote, a Kalenjin elder, unquote. Now, first of all, I think you'd probably agree with me that your own knowledge of Kalenjin culture is necessarily very limited. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And this event, which you attended at the sports club, and of which we've seen a video, and of which we have a transcript, would you agree that it was very much a political event rather than a cultural event? Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't entirely agree with that.
Now, as far as Kalenjin, the word Kalenjin is concerned, do you recognize that it's a relatively recent name assigned to a group or grouping of Nilotic peoples, the Nandi, the Turgan, the Pogot, Kayo, I won't list them all, but various particular ethnic tribal groups to which the word Kalenjin has been more recently invoked as an umbrella name. Are you aware of that?
I am aware.
Indeed, I just said it was the 4th of June. It's the 3rd of June, of course, the Eldoret Sports Club event. So let me correct what I just said about that. So you do agree with that. Now, each group, let's take the Nandi, for example. The Nandi have their own elders. Do you understand that to be correct?
Yes.
As do the Pogot or the Kayo. They have their own elders, their own tribal system. Is that correct?
Yes.
And to be made, as it were, a Kalenjin elder, would you agree is a bit of an artificial nomination?
I wouldn't, because you're becoming the leader of the different sub-ethnic groups within the Kalenjin that you have just mentioned.
Are you aware that there was no Kalenjin Council of Elders until after 2008? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware.
Were you aware that at one time, for example, Mr. Ruto was made an elder of the Sabayots, one of the tribes within the Kalenjin grouping? Were you aware of his undergoing that particular ceremony, that Sabaot, S-A-B-A-O-T? Do you remember that?
I'm not aware.
Mr. Hooper, watch the transcript. Some of the terminology you've been confusing and not being spelt, including nilotic and other phrases. The ethnic names you mentioned as well, I don't think have been spelled, so keep an eye out for that.
Okay, I will. Nandi, Nandi, Tugan, Tugen, Pogot, Pogot, Keo, Keiyo. I haven't mentioned them all. Nilotic is spelled Nilotic. Are you familiar with a man called Nicholas Biwott?
Yes.
Do you remember in August of 2009 that there was a... So I think the last point we'd reached was that you were agreeing that all the speeches that you remained there to hear were all political speeches. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I suggest that there were, in fact, Kikuyu directly involved in organizing that function. And I'm going to see if you can agree with some names I put to you. First of all, Rose Kisama, Kikuyu and Maasai parentage, that she was in charge of the venue and in making all the arrangements for that venue for that particular meeting. Are you aware of that and her position, her role in doing that?
I'm not privy to that information.
All right. The gentleman who was in charge of the catering was an Eldoret hotelier, well known by the name of Mr. Wainaina, Mainaina. Were you aware of that, or of him?
I know him, but I'm not aware he was involved in that ceremony.
Mr. Chomba, Chomba, Kikuyu again, as was Mr. Wainaina, and he was in charge of the electrics and the public address system that was put up, and of course present during the time that the speeches and his equipment were being used. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I remember it was said so in the meeting.
And as you've told us, the media were present, and indeed this particular event received media coverage in the press and on television. Is that right?
I did not see the event in either television or heard on radio, but there were cameras and I assumed those are media people.
And Joseph Nyaga, were you aware that he was there? That's N-Y-A-G-A-H, Nyaga.
No.
And do you know who he is?
No.
Joseph Nyaga,
That I know.
you know him?
Yes.
Well, if I can mispronounce the name, I will. So we are talking about the same person. So who is he? Or at that time, perhaps more importantly, was he?
Yes, if my memory serves me right, he was a nominated member of parliament by ODM, and he comes from Embu, a constituency in the lower part, I think, I don't know, in Embu.
And what's his ethnicity?
Embu.
we'll clarify that another time. And obviously, you didn't stay for the main event, Mr. Ruto's speech. You'd left by then. You can't tell us about that. Did your friends or anyone discuss, or did anyone later, tell you anything about it?
That question is not, I have not understood it well.
Well, afterwards, did anyone tell you what Mr. Ruto had said?
No.
Were you interested to find out?
I wasn't interested because in the first place, I did not go there because I wanted. It's because they kept asking me to go.
Okay. Well, we have that transcript. And do you have that transcript in front of you? If not, can you be provided, please, with the transcript in English that you had yesterday? I just want to take you just to a few parts of this, which is, as we know, it's a prepared, helpfully prepared by the prosecution, and there's no central disagreement with its contents. And we have had a look at it on a previous occasion, and I'd like you to look at it again today. If you don't have a copy, perhaps the prosecution.
We have a spare clean copy we can provide.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. You got it? Thank you very much. It's page 27 of that bundle. And it's the bit where Musalia Mudavadi is talking. Now, just so that we're clear, where's Musalia Mudavadi from, and who was he at the time that you remember?
He is from the western part of Kenya. Luhya dominated the region. And I do not remember whether he was a member of parliament, but I know previously he had been a member of parliament.
And he came to stand as vice president, is that right, under the ODM ticket?
Yes.
That is in the contested 2007 election, of course. And he's speaking here, and you may remember, because I commented on it yesterday, that the prosecution ended there at the bottom of the page with, they wanted to mutilate the ODM. We said, quote, if they sharpen their knives, then we'll sharpen ours, unquote. Now, I'd like you to turn over the page and see immediately what follows. At line 951, where he's saying, quote, if it's a political battle, fine. Let's fight each other politically. And he goes on to talk about coalitions. Just drop your eye down to line 962. I'll pick it up there. Won't read it all because it would take time. But he's saying here, quote, so in order for us to unite as citizens of Kenya, I'd like to ask you not to play around with ODM wings. Let's stand united as one and respect each other. And again, dropping your eye towards the end of the page, we can see the bottom of the page. He's talking of, right at the bottom, line 990. He's saying they want freedom, not freedom to go to another country, but freedom to be able to tell the leaders of the past, but now also give us space democratic space to also move. And then there's another speaker that takes over from him. Now, I appreciate that you then left, but I'd like you to turn with me, please, to page 40, where William Ruto is addressing people. And I just want to pick up on a few parts of his statements here to get a flavour of what this meeting was. And at line 1409, you see WR, William Ruto, and he's saying this, quote, "I want to say that I'm grateful to my colleagues, those from the Rift Valley and those who are not from the Rift Valley, who've come from the nation of Kenya. I thank you for you've come here for one reason, to support me, because the people of the Rift Valley have said that I should run for the position of President of Kenya." So you see that and what is being said. And he goes on, you can see, dropping your eye down that the subsequent passage. "I'm declaring myself as candidate," he says. And then he goes into a speech at line 1419. He says, quote, "I'd like to say the following. I have two things to say. First, there is poverty in our country, Kenya, and there are great differences between those who are wealthy and those who are poor. As leaders of our country, Kenya, we have to start thinking, how are we going to remove the differences between the poor people and the wealthy people?" And he continues talking about that. And then at line 1440, he says this, so, quote, "So fellow leaders, let's be truthful. Let's not deceive each other. Finally, I would like to say that, as people of the Rift Valley, we are here today and we want to assure our fellow Kenyans that we are ready to work with other Kenyans to build our nation and make it a country that benefits us all," unquote. Now, you weren't there for that speech and you didn't learn about it later. I understand that, but I thought it helpful to refer you to that passage. Incidentally, a small point, but you noticed, didn't you, that the cloak that Mr. Ruto had to wear was made of cow skin. Remember you said that yesterday? You noticed that correctly. I am not saying you're wrong. You noticed it. He was wearing what appeared to be a cow skin. Is that right?
Right.
Are you aware that, in fact, Kalenjin elders have a practice on nomination of, in fact, wearing a special kind of skin, of a monkey skin? I can't remember the name. It's the rather nice monkey with the white bits. Some people say he looks like a vice-chancellor, but I can't remember the name of it. But are you aware of that? There is a special skin from a particular monkey which is used to cloak the nominated elder.
Yes, I'm aware. I am aware.
And so this cow skin was it's a bit of dressing up, really, isn't it, that day?
It was.
With a word you're looking for, colobus?
That's the word. I should have remembered it. It was a well-known place in Arusha, I remember as well, but some time ago. Can I take you now to a map? Can I call for a map to be brought up? It's a prosecution map. We mentioned it yesterday that we'd use it. And I'd just like to share it with you, Mr. Witness. It's KEN OTP 0041-0419. 0419. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I just, while that's being done, Mr. Witness, it hasn't appeared on the transcript. Oh, it has appeared on the transcript. Sorry, we've got a sort of staggering of the transcript at the moment. So don't worry about that, Mr. Witness. The transcript's fine. So coming back to this plan, it's a public document, and it can be shown. It's up there, is it? Doesn't show up very well, and it doesn't print out very well, but it does show up on other screens that I've used as a clearer. Well, while I'm looking at this, can I pass up a printout? In fact, I think we might have. I've got a hard copy here for the witness, and sufficient numbers for both the bench and one or two for the others. And if it's not clear, it's clearer, I think, possibly on the printout. So, Mr. Witness, while that's being distributed, if you can just look at that. I know it's not the clearest, but if you look, you'll see it's a map of Eldoret. Remember, we're in public session, by the way. But I want to draw your attention to two places there. One is Langas, and the other is Yamumbi, and how they're depicted on this plan. And if we look at the main road going down, as we can see, to Eldoret International Airport from the centre of Eldoret, halfway almost from Eldoret, on the left of that road we have Langas Catholic Church, or Cathedral in fact, I think it is, and the Catholic University is there on the left as well. We can see that. These are marked on the map. And then if we look on the other side of the road, we have an area marked Langas. Do you see that?
Yes.
And indeed, on this map, it may be a bit faint, but we can see that the map attempts to show streets, a crisscross network of streets. So just pausing there, Langas is very much a town, houses cluster together. Well, let's compare it to Yamumbi. We come to Yamumbi, which is the next area along, and you can see that. So in comparing and contrasting these two areas, Yamumbi is far more open area, isn't it, with scattered farms. Do you agree?
Agree.
I'm sorry, do you agree for the transcript?
I agree.
You do. Thank you. And Langas is more of a townscape. Is that right?
Right.
And then looking at our plan, we can see the areas around it, starting with Kapseret, Kapseret, going towards the airport, that is. We can see Limok, Simat, Kapseos, and I'm sorry I haven't got a hard copy for those upstairs. So we can see the area that we're in, and we can even see Kiamba, which is marked to the right, bottom right of this plan. Now, people living in Langas, quite a number of them have farms in Yamumbi. Is that right?
Right.
And indeed, Langus and Yamumbi are generally regarded very much as being together, not as two very separate places, but as a place where one community lives, Kikuyus, essentially. Is that right?
No, Langas is multi-ethnic.
But the vast majority of people in Langus are of what ethnicity?
Kikuyu.
And the next grouping ethnicity there, would that be Luo?
Come up again.
After the Kikuyu, is the next grouping, largest grouping, the Luo?
That is contestable, either Luo or Luya.
Right. Now, there's a place there called Kisimu Ndogo. Is that right? Which is small Kisimu. It's Swahili for saying small Kisimu. Of course, Kisimu is the Luo capital in Western. That's right, isn't it?
I cannot see it from the map here.
Yeah, it's not marked, but I think we've touched on it, that there is a place where Luos live, and it's called, because so many Luos live there, Kisimu Ndogo, and it's part of, and it's found within Langas. That's right, isn't it?
Right.
Okay. Right, thank you. So there's our geography, as it were. 27th of December, voting takes place. And on the 30th of December, after the results, the deeply contested results are announced, you witness the areas that you mentioned earlier erupt, and the violence started. The burnings and the violence started. That's right, isn't it?
Right.
Mr. Hooper, are you done with the map?
Yes, I have.
This would be a place to put it in, if that's your intention.
Yes, please. And can I just spell Lemok, Lemook, and Kisimu, Kisumu, for the record as well. So can that be exhibited, please? A public document.
I'll be asking the prosecution for any objection.
There's no objection.
The document is admitted as the next in the Ruto defense exhibit.
Le document KEN OTP 00410419 se verra attribuer la cote EVD TD09 00218 ou pièce de la défense pour M. Ruto numéro 218. Le document est public.
Mr. Hooper, I noticed that I see a Lemok on the map that's spelled with only one O.
I think Your Honour's correct, and that is the correct spelling, Lemok.
Okay.
Thank you. And we're still in public session, Mr. Witness, and let me distract you from the map. And so, 30th of December, you, as you told us, burnings and violence erupted. And you were in a particular area, and you related to us what you witnessed that evening and over to the next day, the 31st. And as we understand your evidence, and as you told us, come the 31st, basically after the 31st, you'd moved away from that area and you were elsewhere. That's essentially correct, isn't it?
Correct.
Now, on the 30th December, after those results were announced and violence broke out that you witnessed, were you aware that violence also broke out elsewhere in Kenya?
Yes, I'm aware.
And even more extensive or striking violence, for example, in Kisumu. Did you hear about that?
I heard there were violence in Kisumu.
In Mombasa, too. Is that right?
Right.
In Nairobi, as we know, very extensive violence. Is that right? So what was happening in Eldoret was happening in very disparate parts of Kenya. Is that right?
The nature of the violence was different between that happened in Eldoret and other parts of Kenya.
I can see that there were different features. Do you want to tell us in what way it was different?
The difference is in Eldoret, the violence appeared to have been planned and coordinated, while in other places it was just haphazard.
And indeed, you told us yesterday how it was that sudden fires occurred in many places at once. And that was one of the reasons for that conclusion of yours, was it not?
I've not gotten your statement correct.
I think you were telling us yesterday how you noticed that these fires broke out not in one place, but in many places at once, which led you to the conclusion that it appeared to have been organized. Is that right?
Right.
Now, you told us of voting, and then you were moved by the prosecution's questions to the 30th of December. But I want to stop on another day, which you weren't asked about. And that's the day before the election results, the 29th of December. Is it right, and I have the advantage of seeing what you've said before in your statement at paragraph 37, is it right that on that day you learned that there were riots in Langas? That is the day before the results.
That's right.
And who was confronting whom in those riots?
There was a Kikuyu involved and a Luo involved. 2 people. Those are the people that sparked off the violence.
Right. But this was not violence, a fight between 2 people, was it? This was intercommunal violence that broke out on the 29th. Is that right?
Yes, started between 2 people.
And again, bearing in mind that we are still in public, is it right that, in fact, someone came and suggested that the people where you were, don't go into it any further than that, people where you were, should go and help the Kikuyus, and because the Kikuyus were being overwhelmed by the Luos. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that violence continued over much of the day of the 29th. Is that right?
Right.
And indeed, people were killed. Is that right?
Right.
In fact, Luos were killed. Is that right?
And a Kikuyu.
And a Kikuyu.
Yeah.
So that's the 29th, and it was And so come the 30th, come these election results in the Langas area, there'd already been dramatic events. That's right, isn't it?
Right.
And people went to help, and the result was that there was a standoff between the communities on the 30th of December. Is that right?
Right.
And then with the results, it kicked off again, if I can put it like that. Is that right?
I've not gotten that question well.
Well, on the 30th of December, there was a standoff, but then after the election results, violence restarted. Is that right?
Yes.
And we've heard of houses being burnt. And indeed, at that time, is it right that some Kalenjin milk sellers were killed in Langas?
I am not aware of that.
You told us yesterday of person 19. Do you remember coming with 20?
Right.
And as we're getting into detail, perhaps we'd better go into closed session, if we may, private session.
Private session.
Private session.
Nous sommes en audience publique, Monsieur le Président.
So essentially, coming back to the position, on the night, you learned on the 1st of January that during the night or prior to the 1st of January, that Luos had been beheaded in or around Kisumu and Dogo. Is that right?
Right.
And you saw 2 of these heads yourself. And let me ask you again, in your statement you say, the people also told me, quote, this is your statement, the people also told me that there were another 3 heads of Luo men in the other roads leading to the junction. Is that right?
I hadn't remembered that, but that probably is what I was told.
So you agree that we now have 5 heads of Luo men. Now, the heads you saw, were they on posts? Were they stuck on posts?
No, the 2 were, sorry, on the road.
Did you see any decapitated bodies?
Not that day, but later when I visited the morgue.
Mr. Hooper, hold it. I think the witness's answer at line 14 was no. The 2 were on the road. Was that your answer?
Yes.
So you didn't see any bodies until later when you happened to visit the morgue. Well, very well. So these heads had been, these people had been killed or been killed by decapitation. Their bodies weren't there. Someone had taken these heads and planted them in roads around that junction. And that would seem to be a very purposeful and shocking act. And why do you think that was done?
I'm sorry, I don't terribly see the question. that in that, when there was evidence given, it seems, from council preceding it.
Well,
Mr. Hooper,
yes.
maybe you should break down the questions
Very well.
instead of roll them all into one.
Yes, very well. Why do you think such a shocking thing was done?
As I've said, I saw two heads on the road. I didn't see these other ones that you are saying were planted on some posts.
Well, you heard that there were another 3, quote, from your statement. People also told me that there were another 3 heads of Luo men in the other roads leading to the junction. Right, so let's assume that that's correct, what you were told. What was the purpose of heads? No bodies, just heads. What was the purpose of that, do you think?
That time I understood it to mean that it was to warn the Luos that if they continued looting and destroying property belonging to Kikuyu, that is what would happen to them.
Well, the effect, I suggest, was this, in any event, that from the 31st, the violence in Langas, Urumbi, ended on the 31st. So, for example, business premises had been burnt on the 31st, at the centre, for example. Houses had been burnt. But essentially, from the 31st, and certainly by the 1st of January, that the violence in that area stopped in Langas and Yawumbi. Do you agree with that?
I don't quite remember whether the violence stopped in that time you're talking about.
Well, that's the position. And where there were premises burned, it's our position, they were burnt on the 31st, you see. I mean, and you don't know when your premises were burnt. That's right, isn't it? You'd left them on the 31st. People had left Yawumbi on the 31st. And for all you know, it might have been then that the buildings were set fire to and destroyed. Do you agree?
Said my premises was burned on the 2nd of January. As informed.
All right, wait, don't tell us who informed you. We're in public session.
Yeah. Well, whatever you were told, you don't know for sure. That's right, isn't it? It could have been the 31st. Whenever you were told, it could have been the 31st.
I don't want to commit myself to that.
Right, very well. Now, just coming back to these heads. Of course, the relatives of those men would not only have to deal with a dead relative, but a mutilated.
All over. By midnight of 30th, there was no more burning of the house. So it appears the attackers received orders to retreat. That is according to my understanding. And then, on the 31st, at around 11, the attacks again happened, almost at the same time. So, in my mind, I made up that the attackers also received orders to now swing into action. That is why I made up that conclusion.
Private session for my next question.
Nous sommes en audience publique, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. Witness Mr. Hooper has concluded his cross-examination. Ms. Ambry, are you where you were yesterday?
Your Honors, thank you. We have no questions for this witness.
Thank you. Ms. Pugliati, any re-examination?
There's no re-examination from the prosecution.
Thank you very much, witness. We have come to the end of your testimony. We heard testimony that all parties agreed must have been a difficult experience for you. And thank you for coming to tell us what you observed, and we wish you a safe trip back. Thank you. You are discharged. The blinds will come down so that the witness may be ushered out of the courtroom. And we will remain for a quick roundup of what's happening next, housekeeping. Or perhaps while we do this, Ms. Bozette, let's not bring down the blinds. Witness will be asking you no further questions, but you can stay there for a minute so we can finish things. And Mr. Steinberg.
Your Honours.
Where are we?
Your Honours, as indicated earlier, we have one further witness for this session. The witness has been referred to VWU, who are busy making the necessary arrangements for his transportation to the court. I'm just checking. We are in public session. I can advise that the witness is experiencing certain health problems which are complicating his travel to the court, and he will not be able to travel to the court before the 5th of July. VW have informed us that they anticipate and they are aiming to have him ready to testify by the 10th of July. We believe that that will provide sufficient time to finish with this witness prior to the end of the session on the 16th. Apart from that, we have no further witnesses to call at this time. The remaining witnesses are all the subject of litigation before your chamber, before your Honours.
So the point is that no other witnesses are there for the prosecution to call, apart from the witnesses that we're waiting to hear from the appeals chamber. Is that it?
Your Honours, apart from those witnesses, there are a further 2 witnesses I've mentioned earlier, that there is a pending ex parte filing before the chamber, and we do hope to submit a confidential filing as soon as we get the necessary indication from the chamber.
Of course, the appeals chamber turned down the request for suspensive effect, so arrangements will then be made for the rest, as it were.
Your Honours, as I'm informed, the registry, in consultation with the prosecution, is in the process of making those arrangements, and will, in fact, today inform the chamber of those proposals.
Any observation from the defence? None.
No, Your Honour, grateful.
Your Honour, the position that has been explained had been indicated to us. We had, in view of the arrival of that witness on 10th and the very close date by which this session is supposed to end, we had suggested to the prosecution if they could give us an indication of the documents they intend to ascribe to that witness, so that we can take stock of the situation and probably hasten the hearing when we resume.
That is a matter between the parties, right? Yes. All right. We will end it there. Witness, again, thank you for bearing with us. That concludes our proceedings for today, and we'll remain advised of when the next witness is coming. The blinds will be brought down, and the witness is to be ushered out of the courtroom.